This is Liz Renzel with Crawford Media Group, and today our guest is Sherry Few, President and founder of United States Parents Involved in Education. We'll be talking about how the Denver School District promotes queer literature classes while failing to teach math, reading, and writing. Welcome to our program, Sherry.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on, Liz.
Sherry, tell us a little bit about your organization before we talk about what's going on in our school systems.
Well, United States Parents Involved in Education is a national nonprofit organization with the goal or the mission of closing the U.S. Department of Education and ending all federal education mandates. And the reason that is our mission is that we understand that the majority of the nefarious pedagogies originate from the federal government and are incentivized with federal dollars.
And so you're actually on a mission to help parents do something about their child's education.
Well, yes. And of course, again, with this federal mission, we've had, for 5 years, in those last 5 years, we've seen so many things exploding across the educational culture that are just alarming. And so, again, while they originate with the federal government, they have permeated the entire education system, especially in the K-12 systems now.
Yeah, and, I would say it's really up to the parents to get involved with their kids' education, go to the board meetings, find out what their kids are learning in order to do anything about this situation, right?
Oh, yes, it's very important. In fact, there is a group in Colorado that's addressing this issue in their school. It's the Colorado Parents Advocacy Network, and I applaud them for petitioning for an investigation into this program. So parents need to be engaged. Unfortunately, the education system has begun to be covert about most of this. In fact, none of this, these queer literature programs, these diversity, equity, and inclusion programs that are related to this seal of diversity that the Denver school is offering, none of this is on their website. So some of the parents learned about it because there's already 20% of the high school students are a part of this quote-unquote club for the seal of diversity. So obviously some parents found out about it, and the Daily Signal, who wrote an article about it, was able to gain all of the information that we have on the program through a Freedom of Information records request. So again, the schools have become very covert about this indoctrination that's happening. And in the meantime, students aren't learning. In this high school, in Denver students, only 39% of them are proficient in reading and writing, and 29% are proficient in math. So they're neglecting the education that children deserve while pumping their brains full of this indoctrination.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So they are actually pushing an honors program for LGBTQ indoctrination, while math, literature, science, and honors programs are being eliminated across the country.
Yes, that is true. And it shows that in the woke schools like this one, the so-called educators care more about appeasing the radical left than teaching children the basics. And that's why US PI is encouraging and empowering parents to rise up and protect children from these Pied Pipers of perversion.
So so the teachers have to be on board, or are they being forced to teach these, required by the school boards?
Well, I think you probably have a mix, but many of the teachers are on board with this. We've had good laws enacted across the country to try to prevent some of this perverted education, or indoctrination is a better word. Mm-hmm. But we've seen where teachers have publicly said they're going to just ignore the laws and they're going to teach it anyway. And, once they get behind that door, we have no idea what they're teaching in these classrooms.
Right.
So, and I think the good teachers are leaving, Liz. I think the ones that understand that this is indoctrination, that it is really harming children, it's promoting division rather than unity, as the whole idea is diversity, equity, and inclusion. But they're just pitting people groups against one another. So I think the good teachers that recognize it for what it is are leaving the profession. And I believe that is the reason we're seeing teacher shortages all over the country. But the other ones who have bought into this, in some sense, I pity them as well, because they are victims of the same education system. You know, young students entering college and going into the College of Education who want to become teachers, basically their K-12 experience has already laid the foundation with the indoctrination they received, and then they go into the colleges of education, which are the most liberal on the campus, and they are further indoctrinated, and they're taught that it's their responsibility to affect change in the culture by teaching children that it is that responsibility is passed on to them, and it is their responsibility to affect social change in our country.
That is, that's so unfortunate, because it's almost like they don't have a choice. But what grade, you mentioned high school, are they teaching this literature in lower grades also? Is it starting younger than this?
Well, in this particular case in Denver, it is high school related. However, there is evidence from programs, research that I've done all over the country, where there are programs as young as pre-K, where they are beginning to teach this to children and beginning to groom very young children into the thought process that they could be a sex opposite their own biological sex. I mean, very young children that can't even grasp or begin to think about sexuality are being groomed so that they will, when they get into their puberty years, they will begin to question their own sex, their own biological sex.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And, parents really need to be really engaged at the situation. I was involved with gathering signatures to put on a ballot here, requiring schools to inform parents about their underage children wanting gender transitions, because some schools are not required to tell the parents that. And so they go ahead and let these students go through with thinking about changing their sex, and parents aren't aware. In fact, I think in California they passed the law that schools are not required to tell parents these things.
That's right. In California, teachers are prohibited by law from telling parents if their children are considering transitioning.
Yeah, that's absolutely ludicrous. These kids, like you said earlier, they can't think for themselves. They don't know any better. And here they're being just bombarded with these thoughts and these teachings that is going against probably what their parents are trying to teach at home. Yes, very much so. And, that's another whole piece of this agenda from the left is, I believe, an intentional agenda to pit children against their parents. And, it's very frightening to think about all of this together, because it paints a picture of what we've seen happen in other countries historically. We saw with the Mao regime how they indoctrinated their children, pumped them full of propaganda, and put them in people groups and pitted them against one another, just like they're doing today with the oppressor and oppressed model. Same thing happened in the Mao regime. And then, of course, we know Hitler employed the same strategy. He took the minds of the children and distorted everything they knew about their country, and that's how he was able to succeed in his horrific efforts to wipe out the Jews. So we're seeing this right before our very eyes in our own country. And so it's not just parents, Liz, that need to be alert and aware. I think every freedom-loving American needs to become informed about this, about how their taxpayers are funding to the indoctrination of children to turn them against our country and one another. And eventually we'll see chaos and collapse. We're already seeing chaos. The collapse is just yet to come. And once the collapse happens, then the dictators march in and take over.
and change our form of government. And this is exactly what's happening in the government schools today. It's being funded by our tax dollars, and if we don't put an end to it, we're going to lose our very freedom.
That's such a valid point, I think, for so many adults thinking, oh, that really doesn't affect me. My kids are grown. We didn't have that problem then. And, it's just left up for today's society to try and do something. But it is absolutely important for people to get their vote out, but vote biblically, see what's going on, whether it affects them or whether their children are, grown or not, because these things are important. And you're right, we can't change anything unless we step out.
Right, and that's the good news, actually, in my opinion, because I've been following education policy most of my adult life for more than 25 years. And, 20 years ago, I was the tinfoil hat lady. Everybody thought I was, even my father, who taught me my conservative values, said I'd really gotten off the deep end when I started coming home from conferences and talking about, this agenda. But there were people who knew more than I that mentored me to learn these things. So today, I'm pleased that there are so many people that are investigating, like the parents in Colorado who are petitioning for an investigation. They're doing freedom of information requests. They're speaking out at their school boards. One of the things that's been kind of popular across the country lately is banning cell phones in schools. And, while it sounds like a good idea, and might have been a good idea when they first, were popular, but today I believe it's an attempt by the establishment to try to hide what's being taught in schools, because that's so much of what we're seeing on Facebook. Even when we were fighting Common Core, there were little pictures on Facebook of the Common Core map. And so I think that's another way that they're trying to be covert about their indoctrination, is by banning cell phones for students at school.
We've been visiting with Sherry Few, president and founder of United States Parents Involved in Education. And we've been talking about how the Denver school system is promoting the LGBTQ movement by bringing queer literature into classrooms while failing to teach math, reading, and writing. Sherry, where can our listeners go to learn more, and what can they do to stop this?
Well, I would invite them to go to our website, which is USPIE, that's USPI.org. There are a lot of resources there that can help parents navigate, like the school board system, for example. If they're not familiar how to, navigate that system, we've got great resources there for parents. We would encourage them to, on the homepage, there's a button to join the movement. If they'll do that, then we can get them connected with people in their state who are like-minded, and we'll provide information to them about, the latest things that are happening in the government schools. And so there's lots of great resources there, and we encourage your listeners to go there. In addition, we have a film that we produced called Truth and Lies in American Education. It's really a good place to start if people are just learning about these problems, so they can access the DVD through our website. And we really want to get that information into the hands of as many people as possible, so we don't have a licensing fee for showing it to large audiences, so they can show it in their community, in their church, and get together with other people and decide how they can work together to put a stop to it in their community.
Thank you so much, Sherry, for joining us today and bringing light to this topic. And hopefully our listeners will get involved and get to the school board meetings, even if you're the grandparents. Thanks, Sherry.
All right. Thank you, Liz.